So, just a housekeeping rule. Just turn off all cell phones, just for the purpose of being videotaped. You don't really want to have those technological interferences with the video. I want to welcome all you guys to this panel on careers in older adults. My name is Trudy Rowe, and I am a second-year student in the MSW program. And I'm just going to briefly introduce the members of this panel. And we have Agnes Halarewicz to my left, Gina Moffa, and Rai Camille Rance. So help me in welcoming these three alum back to NYU. So give me and thank you for being here. So I'm going to have each of you introduce yourself briefly and tell us the year of your graduation, your brief professional experience. I know that everyone has a copy of a short biography of you and your topics of special interest, and we'll get going from there. So starting with you, Agnes.
Sure, my name is Agnes Halarewicz. I graduated from NYU School of Social Work in 2001, so it doesn't seem that long, but it was a while ago. I specialize, well, currently I'm a director of the Next Stage Senior Care Services Program, which is a division of People Care, which is a home care agency. So we provide, I run the private pay aspect of it, so we provide caregivers to people who are homebound and need additional assistance. As you learn when you go out into the world and work with this population, insurance covers very, very little. So the need for private services definitely prevails. And my special interests are elder abuse in particular. I have a little bit of a criminal justice background, though my undergrad was psychology, but I am involved in the criminal justice aspect of things, and in particular with elder abuse. Sorry, the end.
Hi, I'm Gina Moffa. I graduated here in 2004. It's my first time back since then. And I am a social worker and a program coordinator development also at the 92nd Street Y. I work specifically with Holocaust survivors. When I left here, I went to what was at that time the NYU Trauma Studies program, and I wanted to find a way to sort of merge my clinical skills that I learned here and really wanted to utilize with Holocaust survivors. So, I have about 700 seniors that I work with and about 50 Holocaust survivors that I do individual and group therapy with. So I'll talk more about that soon.
Hi, I'm Rai. I graduated from Silver in 2008 and 2010. When I first left NYU, I started working with at Beth Abraham, which is a long-term managed care program for elderly. The age range starts about 55 and up. Shortly thereafter, I began working at Senior Health Partners, which is part of Health First. In between that, I also worked at FEGS towards getting the LC hours that everybody wants. And I've also worked with HIV, but my specialty is working with old adults.
Okay, thank you. So how we're going to run this panel is I'm going to ask you a few questions, and if we have some time in the end, and I kind of want to open it up more to the students to just have them ask you the questions, so I'm going to cut down on the questions that we have here. So I'll open it up to the audience to ask a few questions, and if we have time for any deliberation, be sure to do that. And as Gina started to emphasize on this a little more about your path from student into the job that you have now. So I just want to get a sense from you what that looked like, transitioning from student into the career of working with older adults, and any advice that you would give to us as students who are leaving the program.
Okay, well, what I found when I was a student here, that it's much easier to figure out what you don't want to do than what you do actually want to do. So it's sort of a process of elimination. When I was a student here, I was under the impression, well, I knew I wanted to work with adults. I didn't really want to work with kids, I wanted to work with adults. not in particular with older adults. And my first year's internship was on the inpatient psychiatric unit at Jacobi Hospital, which turned out to be a geriatric unit because of the psychiatrist on that unit happened to specialize in gerontology. So, so that was my first exposure to like an extreme work with older adults, and that was very interesting. I didn't really give it much more thought afterwards because my second year placement was in a substance abuse clinic with adults. And that was very interesting. And after I graduated, I really was just kind of looking around what was out there, and I saw a position for a program manager at a senior center, and it sounded very interesting, and I applied and haven't looked back since. It's, you know, the reality of going out there and finding a job and sort of following your path is that sometimes it kind of falls in your lap. You know, you think you may know what you want to do, you get this ideal perfect job, and it's just not what you thought it would be, and that's okay. You know, I always say go out there, explore, have an idea. Internships, volunteering, great ways of doing, you know, of sort of getting your feet wet a little bit. And sometimes, you know, the first week may not go so well, the first month may not go so well, but, you know, you may learn to love it, so give it a shot. So the long and the short of it is, I suppose, I sort of was guided in that direction for my internships, but it wasn't exactly a plan when I graduated. So that was my path to it, the indirect.
Feel free to pop in and just
yes.
so popcorn stuff.
Oh, okay. A lot like Agnes, I feel like I also did what, I tried everything out. A lot of the time, I came into social work school thinking I wanted to work with women and trauma, in some kind of trauma situation. And my first internship was at a domestic violence shelter. Having no clinical skills whatsoever, I felt like I was completely unprepared for all of it. But I still wanted to do trauma work. There was something in me that just knew that whatever we do, and that's sort of the thing about social work, is that you can really do anything. But there's always something underlining in the populations that we work with. And so I wanted to find what that was. I felt as though that was trauma, that either it was childhood trauma, whether it was, you know, a trauma in a lifetime, natural disasters, war, that was an underlying thread that connected all the populations together. So I thought that was a great place to start. I was really passionate about it, and every placement I had, from hospital work, I worked with borderline, continuing day treatment program with borderline personality disorder, trauma. It was very intense. It was from, you know, from domestic violence to borderline, to children who were victims of violence also. And so I had absolutely no desire whatsoever to work with older adults. I'll just make that clear. However, when I graduated from the trauma program right after social work school, I could not find a job. And I thought, okay, I've got these great clinical skills from NYU. This is a great school. What do I do now? I literally did not want to work just doing discharge planning. That's not why I went to NYU. But they were the best paying jobs. So I figured I had to choose one or the other, so I decided to take a job with a Jewish nonprofit called Dorot on the Upper West Side, and they happen to work with homebound seniors, and you go and you do home visits, and to me it felt more meaningful because I would at least be having interactions I felt could be, you know, ongoing. So that was initially how I felt, and I say felt because I had no idea what I was going to do. But in there, I met Holocaust survivors, and there it sort of all fell together for me, and I could pretty much go on about it, but it was really when I knew that that was a niche that there was my trauma work, there was my research, there was the clinical work, there was so much depth within this population that I'm still humbled and still learning, but I don't know if I would necessarily always be, you know, doing hospital work per se with seniors, but this specific population in the senior program at the 92nd Street Y is really everything. I'm sorry, I just don't want to ramble, but I'll go on with questions. I'm sorry.
It's okay. When I was here, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what population I wanted to work with, and it certainly was not working with older adults. I can just tell you that off the top. I had no desire to work with older adults whatsoever. When in my undergrad, they give us 2 internships. So I had my first internship with LGBT population. Then the second one was with formerly homeless women and their families. So I was there at somewhat of a shelter type of structured environment for them. And then when I got to graduate school, I was at ACS. So older adults were not even on my radar. When I left NYU after I graduated, I just wanted to work. And the first thing that came up, I had a friend who was an RN, and she did home visits, and she worked with the elderly, and she said there's an open position, so just apply. And that was how I got involved with working with older adults. And as soon as I got the position, it just felt right. It felt so right. And it gives you an opportunity to connect on a different level with the people that you work with. You realize that there's a need. They're not as independent as they used to be at one time. They're a vulnerable population, and you want to do all you can to help them. I would just add, which is an aside, that it would have been helpful for me, I find, that if you want to go in a different direction, but keep it, add the social work piece and the policy piece, to do a dual degree program. I know that's off the mark, but to me it would have been a lot different for me, because there's a component that you have to be aware of, entitlements, eligibility, and different things that affect the seniors as they grow older, because they don't have the support that they need, and you need to be well-rounded to do that. I've learned over the few years that I've been out of school, all those things came together, but in the back of my mind I'm thinking if I would have had that MSW, MPA, I might be able to be even a better support to that population.
If I could speak to that piece, actually, a couple of things you said, like, right, very true for me, that it just felt right for you. Oftentimes, you sort of get a job because you need a job and you're there, and it's okay, it's fine, or whatever. But when you find the population that you really are in, that just makes sense for you, you'll know. You know, I mean, I know it sounds like, it sounds so flighty to say, but it really is true, because it was the same for me. It just kind of, you know, this didn't feel right. In fact, after I graduated, I had a job at a mental health clinic for 1 month. I was like, this is not working. It's not for me. I was not happy. And I knew it right away. And same with the senior center. I went into the senior center, and it was like the opposite was true. I shouldn't say same, the opposite. I walked in, and I was like, okay, I can see myself here. So, you know, so you'll know. Don't put so much pressure on yourself, because at the end of the day, you're going to need a job when you graduate, and that's, you know, that sort of goes on top of the list as opposed to finding that.
Your decision doesn't have to be so concrete when you're in school.
Right, exactly. And also what you said in regards to getting this dual degree program, I not going into the dual degree, but I too found that you really need to be able to know the benefits, the concrete services that are available for people, not just with this population, but really with all other populations as well. And NYU is very clinically oriented, and that's great, and this is a fantastic set of skills. In the real world, you really need to know case management stuff as well. And so, I mean, these aren't my programs, so I'm not really plugging these programs, but, and they're not, and I know this from being a student, and I know this from being a social worker and then an administrator. Programs like Adult Protective Services, ACS, Community Guardianship programs, those are hardcore case management programs where you really do everything from the beginning to end, and it's hard, and it's labor intensive, and it's a lot, but you know, you put in a year in those programs, you walk away from it really knowing the field. Not just the field with a specific population, but you really know what's out there, and it's immensely helpful. So,
the resources, you will learn so much.
And then there are organizations like that provide. Sorry, I told you I could go on. Okay? there are organizations that really cover that may appear that they cover only a certain population, like an organization like JASA, and I can speak to them because I used to work there. But It's a Jewish Association for the Services for the Aged. So you think geriatric services only, but they also have adult services programs. They also have community guardianship programs. They also have caregivers programs, which completely cover, you know, you think you're only dealing with the seniors. No, you're dealing with families. You're doing benefits from everyone. So it really is, those places are great places to start yourself off, where you can get in, get your feet wet, learn things from bottom up, and then if you set yourself up with a large organization, like you mentioned FEGS or even the Doroth, there's so many programs there that you can move around and really, you know, really learn quite a bit about different service provisions. Is everyone here second year? No? No? Okay.
I think it would, I don't know about you both, but I feel because what we're talking about is so concrete and there's so much involved in where we've been for the past, well, many years, that I just wonder, do you know what you want to do? I mean, not what you want to do, but you're obviously here to learn more working with geriatric population. Is there something specific that we can answer, you know, in terms of clinical work or different kinds of jobs within, you know, within working? Because I don't do case management at all. I work with case managers, but I don't do anything. I work with lawyers who will help with advance directives and, you know, legal planning, will planning, estate planning, that sort of thing. But I don't do any, you know, I basically do very clinical work with people who are having family issues, family crises, health crises, mostly health crises. And my job I would classify as deeply spiritual. I do a lot of work with the dying and end-of-life care, and so, you know, in that regard, you know, programming and benefits and stuff like that, I would look to the two of these beautiful women next week. But I would not, that's nothing that I was ever interested in, and it was nothing that I wanted to do. It's hard to come across something like that, but if you know what you want to do, I can help guide you in the right direction, or at least you'll have kind of an idea of where you want to go. I was asking Trudy, I don't know if any of you have taken a class with Barbara Dane. Was she still here? Oh, I'm aging myself. But she taught a class, I'm sure the class is still here, called Spirituality and Social Work. And I thought it was a very fluff class, but I found that in working with the elderly or the dying population, it is probably the #1 class that comes to my mind time and again of what is most helpful in working with these people who are at the end of their lives. And yes, the concrete benefits and planning, those things are extremely vital, but I think having somebody look them in the eyes and say, I know you're here, I'm here for you, I know you're scared, tell me what you're feeling, and not talk to their children, and not talk to their spouses, but to talk to them, and it really moves, it can move you to the edge of your humanity, and that's why I didn't choose Columbia or Fordham or Hunter. I chose NYU for that reason, and and it actually brings chills to me, because although I'm not making the most money as a social worker, I feel the wealthiest based on those, you know, the choices that I've made. So that's why I say, is there something that you're looking for out of being a social worker, or looking, you know, even to work with this population? Because it can be very spiritual and very rewarding if that's something that you're looking to do. So I would love to talk to that, because I have no experience in none of this other stuff.
Just to kind of piggyback really quickly, the spirituality piece, it does come into play when you're working with older adults and any population with social work. But I've always been taught to be very careful when you enter in a conversation with spirituality, just for the purposes of, for lack of a better word, I can't think of what word I should use to describe it, but I'm always mindful of people's cultural backgrounds and their differences, because my beliefs may not be their beliefs, and I don't want to impose any of my feelings or thoughts on them. But when someone brings that up in conversation, then it's opening the door that we can have that conversation. We can talk about spirituality. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and I don't mean God actually as in God, right, but, you know, just the idea that it's life and death.
I think spirituality in terms of meaning making and that process, as opposed to religiosity and organizational religion and stuff like that. Yeah.
We're taught to be where they are.
Yeah.
That's our number one, rule, and that's pretty much what I find is the most helpful. Where are you?
That's a beautiful way of putting it. I just have to say, I really enjoyed listening to that because I come from a very administrative world, so this is very, very different. Yeah.
But I think this is good and it speaks to the diversity amongst the careers in gerontology. And I kind of want to focus in on what are the good things that have happened within your career and what are the bad things. What does the work look like? What does a bad day look like? What does a really, really good productive day look like? And what does the in-between look like?
Wow.
Death, incontinence, that's a bad day too.
Right.
Sorry, that's the reality. That is, when dementia, that's a bad day. Watching people, specifically watching somebody go through the dying process and resisting it. For me, these are the hardest things. I think, again, I'm sorry I keep coming back to it, but the end of life, the losing of control and watching somebody who was strong and independent, become frail, lose their memory. One specific memory I have is I have a small group of Holocaust survivors that I'm working with. A few of them now have Alzheimer's. And so they have only long-term memory. And it's extremely difficult to work with somebody who's stuck in World War II, or they're stuck in their trauma, and to get them to be safe and present and, to have them remember who you are. Those are the days where I think, boy, I didn't learn that in social work school. This is just life. This is just real life stuff. But it's something that, whether they're a survivor of any atrocity or not, Alzheimer's, dementia, this is, people are just dying while they're alive. And it's, that is a tough day. I guess that's not all one day, but.
Right. Yeah, and for their families as well. I mean, what you see their families going through, trying to understand the diseases that their parents are going through, and also seeing their parents in that frail state. It's not necessarily something that they're used to, or not necessarily something that they understand. There's a lot of education going on with that, and it's heartbreaking sometimes. It really is. But I'm away from that. You can't do really anything without doing some direct practice. You just can't get around that. But I'm more from the administrative end of things. I deal a lot with, in my current job now, but my background is more policies and budgets and administrative, sort of operational things. So a bad day would be losing funding and struggling to keep your staff and keeping the doors open and things like that. So, and
you know how many senior programs were cut?
Yeah. Yes, so. Every year, and every year, like the elder abuse programs, is the funding going to be renewed? And it's like an annual sort of struggle. And so those are the bad days. The good thing is that things keep on going, and the seniors are sometimes their best advocates, and things do kind of go on. And a great day is when you have, you have this one client that you made a difference for, that their lives are different because you were able to get some additional funds for whatever benefits that they needed or things like that. So yeah, so it's a really very, not unlike working with other populations, except that every population, of course, has their own special, unique needs. But it's a really, like you're saying, you really can be involved in anything and everything when it comes to dealing with this population. So if you guys have any specific questions, like you're saying, about any specific aspects of working with this population, by all means. You have a question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was your first job in an administrative position? You didn't start in clinical?
Yeah, it kind of happened that way, yes. I graduated, and I got a job at a mental health clinic, and it was just not, it was the place I was at, it wasn't a good fit for me. It wasn't the clinical aspect of it, and this job at a senior center was for a program manager. I thought I'd give it a shot. And yes, so it was directly administrative. So it was a little different, yes. And I got it straight out of school, which, you know, so that goes to show you. Sometimes it's a long shot, but take it anyway, because you never know what's going to happen. It was one of those, well, I'll just apply. And it was the best job I ever had. I learned a tremendous amount there, because you're not only doing the administrative stuff. It's a senior center, so it's a community center for people, so everybody's there all the time. So I did do counseling. I did do, you know, home visits. I did do assessments and assistance with benefits and things like that. So, yeah.
There's always going to be an administrative piece, because when I was at FEGS, I did the groups and the individual therapy with a wide variety and different populations all across the gamut. But at the end of the session, there was a component where I had to complete my clinical treatment plan and write my progress notes, and that took forever. So you will hone those administrative skills in whatever field of social work that you do. But going back to a good day and a bad day, of course for me, if my patients pass away, that's a bad day. Watching the progression of dementia and Alzheimer's in patients, and being supportive to the patient and the family, but then what happens if they don't have any family? That's an added layer that you have to consider when you work with the elderly, because a lot of people don't have children. They don't have family anymore because their brothers and sisters have passed on. So it adds an additional layer of necessary support that they might need.
And I find that New York City is very unique in working with this specific population. We have a lot of people who move here from all different parts of the country and the world even, and they're single, they live alone in their tiny little apartments. You have a lot of hoarding situations happening. You have families that scattered all over the planet. So that's a little different. Even if you go, you know, if you go up to Westchester, or if you go out to Long Island, somebody ages, they move in with their families. It's a different set of circumstances than it is in New York City and, you know, in the boroughs. So it's very different.
It's easier to get them in a nursing home or assisted living, not when they're outside of the city too.
Right.
People are waiting.
Nursing home.
I was just going to say, you have to really love this population. The death at one point got to me so badly that I had to leave the field, and I went back to NYU and got a master's in international education. I don't know why. You know, ask me, I have like $80,000 extra in debt for, you know, because I couldn't handle the death, and yet at the same time, the 92nd Street Y said, can you at least just run 1 or 2 groups, because this population is attached to you. So I graduated with a master's, and she says, please come back full time, and I couldn't leave. I couldn't leave, and I've been there ever since. So I've been there since 2007. It's just it's a population that sort of burrows its way in, and I can't imagine working with a different. I mean, I really can't, and who knew? But the fact that I, you know, would just say I have to leave, but no, I guess I can't leave. I am attached to you. To an extent that is sometimes unhealthy. I love it. You know, it's a community. It becomes a community when you work with seniors, because in a sense you become their family.
You do. Right.
So it's very unique. It's really unlike, to me, it's very unlike working with children and adults in a good way.
And the reality of it is, we are living during the times where the aging population is expanding rapidly. People are paying more attention to it. You're starting to see more programs and services popping up, more money is being allocated to it, in theory at least. The need for this, you will always have a job, you know, for if you're looking to stay in this with this population, you will be able to experiment with different types of services, because there's so much more popping up, and the aging population that's coming up now, the baby boomers, is very different from the aging population 10 years ago. You know, the average population in the senior center is 85 years old, female, who probably never worked, was a housewife, her husband passed away, the kids moved away, and that's sort of their social circle. The woman who's been coming into the senior center for the past 15 years, maybe. This is not the senior of today. You have this whole new movement towards innovative senior centers, technology, all of that other stuff. You know, a 65-year-old, a person who turned 65 today is a very different person than a person who turned 65 15 years ago.
True. And just to even expand on that, I have a group of 90-year-olds that are taking an advanced iPad class. So, and they know more than I do. So, seriously. So, and just, you know, everything that you can imagine that we would be learning is something that we're expanding to the older population, and they're catching on. And we, you know, really going with it. So, there's just, there's no barriers like there used to be.
And when you talk about the community centers that the elderly come to, just to clarify a little bit, there's a social day program and then there's a medical model program. The medical model program will have a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, PT, OT, and that type of thing at the center where they come, and they'll probably have a nutritional component as well. Social day is more bingo and little outings and different things.
But that's still different from a senior center, right? That's even separate from a senior center. The social adult days and the medical, those are for people, those are for clients who are more advanced in their cognitive or other diseases. Senior centers are like community centers.
I wanted to just piggyback on what you were saying about that and the bad days. And what do you do? The whole aspect of self-care within this field. And then after this, I'm just going to open up to questions from you guys, because I think what you have to say is more pertinent than what I have here on this paper, because you know exactly what you would want to specifically ask, what your needs are. So just in terms of self-care, what that looks like for you and what you have been doing. I know you said you went to international education. I love the $80,000 alone, but I'm sure it benefited you in some way. That you use that.
No, it did. Yeah. Well, I'll say another thing. At that specific time, I was also volunteering with another organization called Health Right International, doing asylum work with torture survivors. So I kind of had it from every angle. That was my volunteer work. So I was just inundated with death and trauma. So I think that's why I left. Specifically now I'm not doing that. But self-care is very hard. At one point this year I was going to a funeral week, and it was just, and some of them were very traumatic, that somebody would survive a concentration camp, step off the curb and get hit by a cab. And that kind of thing just, you know, or whatever. And I think at that point, I knew that I needed to get into more yoga, more meditation, all the things I hated. Kickboxing, you know, like taking diet and exercise. I know we say it's, yeah, let's do it. But I really think it saves me at this point. And, you know, having a really good social support system that you can, you know, talk to about your work is really important. That's for me, outside of drinking. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. I said I wasn't going to say anything inappropriate. I'm just kidding. I am, I'm really
Nothing
kidding.
wrong with happy hours.
I literally am just kidding. Everyone looks so serious. I'm kidding. No, but it's very important with this because it's death and because it's always something very serious. It's, you have a hobby, if you like to garden, if you like to sing, if, you know, do it more than usual, because this can wear on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, just want to say that what you're saying about having a social network and really networking within the field as well is very, very important, because you never know where you're going to end up. I'm in a place where now I'm the only social worker in the company. So I have my network of peers that I hang out with and talk to and navigate the systems with. And it's important to have that, you know, because even with social workers who are not necessarily dealing with the same population, but the set of issues and the set of problems, this can be a very difficult work, and it's very, like you're saying, it gets to you on a very different level than, you know, being an accountant will. So yeah, so that's important to really kind of talk to other people. Particularly if you're not getting, you know, in the real world, this beautiful supervision that you may be getting now in your placements.
Enjoy it.
Right.
Nothing.
that is not necessarily going to continue on that level. So you may even think, you know, of getting a private supervision on the side. People do that. That's something you can always arrange for yourself.
Good supervision is hard to come by.
Yeah, you know, everything's always rushed and fast and concrete, you know, what needs to get done and when.
I did not get one day of supervision since I graduated.
Well, I've had supervisors, but
supervision.
Yeah, exactly.
Two different things.
Yeah.
So think about that. It's good to have. I didn't think it was good to have until I didn't have it. And then I wanted to quit. So, how do you take care of yourself?
Well, I like to sing. I sing with my choir. A lot of my girlfriends are social workers and psychologists and teachers, so we kind of are in the helping profession, so we just have that camaraderie and we know when, okay, you need a break and you just take a step back because it can be very taxing and trying, and I can feel it when I'm getting stressed because it's like a knot in my chest where I really can't breathe. And once 5 o'clock comes on, I can just, because it gets hard. I mean, you're a feeling person, you're in social work because you care about people, and to see somebody expire, somebody who you've worked with, you've developed a relationship with, and you're going to the hospital and you're hoping that they're going to come home and you know the family, it's difficult because you become part of their family. So I think you have to have something inside of you that says, I'm here for this person, but I need to be here for me too, because if I'm not here for me, then I'm not going to be any good to them. They say when you get on an airplane and if you have a child, put the mask on yourself first,
Right.
before you. So that's my motto. Take care of yourself first.
Okay. So I'm going to open up the discussion now to the audience. Feel free. Okay. Who's speaking? She has to run. Don't want to get a ticket. That's fine. So anyone, you can just raise your hand. Yes, Faith.
Hi. So I just want to know a little bit, Gina, about like your agency and like how your role fits within that, because it sounds like you were saying how clinical it is, and that seems like so great. But I just want to know more about how it fits in with the agency.
Okay, so the 92nd Street Y, if anybody doesn't know it, it's a very large educational institution, does entertainment, the arts. It's really a community center, but kind of on a very large scale. So we have a preschool, we have a senior program, and then we have a la carte classes, basically through the arts. We teach languages, I mean anything you can, photography, beading, painting, school of the arts. We have a very well-known dance program. Just as a whole, I'm giving you a background. It's more, I'm the only, out of maybe 600 employees, I'm the only social worker there. In the senior program, we have 700 seniors and a staff of 3. So there's the administrative director who only does administrative work. There's a social worker. I do a lot of, I hire people and stuff also, and our assistant. Within that, originally my role wasn't necessarily supposed to be very clinical. I was just going to be running groups, and that would consist of women's groups of any age. Our program is from age 60 to 102. So it really runs the gamut. It's from every any background. We are a Jewish organization, but we take everybody, and it's what we try to offer. I'll explain more of the clinical part, but what we try to offer in our program is sort of continuing education for older adults. You wouldn't think of it that way, but if somebody is bereaved, they just moved into town back from Florida, something like that, they would come to this program and say, hey, I want to take a class maybe, and for one yearly fee. It sounds weird to say that. They're a part of this program, and it's a senior center in that basically they can stay all day, they can be there 5 days a week and do what they want. The clinical part comes in, they really don't have any other services, so they need counseling, or they need help with their will, stuff like that. A lot of it is family crises. I started to do the work more with the larger population and not just the Holocaust work. specifically because of the family crises that were coming up. But once a community gets wind that there's actually a therapist around, they all want therapy, and they use it. So my clinical piece really started to grow based on word of mouth. That, oh, well, you know, we thought you were young. You know, you look young. You might not have understood us. But then I heard from Estelle that you actually are really smart, and you have your graduate degree from NYU, and I went there. You know, so it's kind of a tricky way to work with this population as a younger person. But once they kind of felt a sense of trust with me, my clinical role just blew up. And I was running 6 groups a day, or am running 6 groups a day, that are men, women, Holocaust survivors. You know, I do a guided imagery group for trauma work, like a meditation group, stuff like that. A decluttering group for the hoarding that we knew was going on. And so, in addition to that, there are the people that say, you know what, I actually need a little extra from this. I'm going through something, or, you know, their spouse is with them in the program and their spouse is dying, and they just need that supportive work. So I found that most of my work has become more and more clinical, that I was just doing appointment, group, appointment, and it wasn't really supposed to be that way. So how it fits into the larger, it's sort of like underhanded. Because although I do so much clinical work, it wasn't originally scaled out to be that way. So that's how it fits in. I made it fit in. Right. But it's unique. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no,
okay.
Thank you.
You mentioned crises. Give me some examples of, I know there are health crises, death, what else? You said so many
The
crises
wretched
come
daughter-in-law syndrome.
I'm sorry?
The daughter-in-law syndrome.
Family dynamics.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of crises with, you know, people getting thrown out of wills because, you know, their son doesn't call them once a week. It sounds very trivial.
No, it's major.
But it
It's
is.
major.
And, you know, it'll affect their health. You know, I have people, you know, most of it, like I said, is health and death. Those are and bereavement, so of some sort. I have a woman I'm working with who just recently lost 2 children in a row, all separately, you know, and, you know, so those are very big things. Mostly they boil down to family, money, family dynamics, health, and dying of someone.
Crisis for me is if the patient loses their benefits or some component of their benefits. That to me it just does something to me inside, because I know the bureaucratic red tape that they're going to have to go to get that service back. So you're dealing with HRA and them not understanding that this is an elderly person. If they don't have their food stamps, then that means they're not going to be able to eat.
Right.
That's a problem for me. And then, what else is a crisis? That would probably be the biggest, because it takes weeks for that to be reinstated. In addition to that, because I work with the long-term managed care program, you have these mailings being sent to the elderly, and some of them have 3rd grade education. They can't read what they're getting in the mail anymore. They're used to someone doing this for them. You have a lot of cultures where the mail played a very dominant role in the home, so that person is no longer there, and you're getting all these mailings. You don't know how to respond to them, and you don't think to ask, because now you're alert-oriented times 1 to 2, and you're very forgetful. You have no more benefits. So then when it gets to the social worker, to go through hoops to help them get that back. So that's a definite crisis.
Thank God you're here. That's tough work. I have to say that. It's very hard work.
It's challenging.
Well, at the end of the day, you know, somebody doesn't have enough money for food, everything else sort of goes on to the back burner.
Yeah.
Also, elder abuse, very prevalent. It's on the rise, global issue that's going on. You know, people, I think the general senses out there seems to be like, oh, it's the family members, it's whatever. But what you see a lot of in New York, it's the friend that they made, you know, at a senior center, or some younger person that they met in a park or in church, and all of a sudden right, all of those actual scams that you read about in the papers, right, and the emails and the newspaper and the telephone calls and using credit cards and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of that stuff going on that is very hidden, that's not really talked about. I mean, you're thinking about, when you think in terms of domestic violence situations and how within the home that is and how difficult that is to see out in the world. Well, think of people who are even more, right, well, not just that, but who are even more, have their lives even more in the sense of privacy and keeping everything. And what if they're starting to lose their memory, and when you start having the initial stages of dementia and all that, and people trying to cover it up and sort of knowing that something's not right and really trying to sort of compensate for it, and so things are being even more hidden. So it really, in that role, you really, really have to be on the lookout for that as well.
They will try to maintain their independence for as long as possible. And you'll think that, oh, they're pretty with it. No, they're forgetting where their keys are, they're forgetting their wallet, somebody stole something from them, no one stole something. Actually, a lot of times, not all the time, but there are people who take advantage of them, but a lot of times that memory is really a big component that you need to watch out for.
Yeah. Well, in particular, I think with this population, just as much as with the mentally ill population, you really need to have a conversation for more than 5 minutes. And within the 5 minutes, everything may seem fine. Have a conversation for 10, 15 minutes. Ask the same question at the beginning of the session and at the end of the session and see how it goes. Because you're really not going to be able to pick up on signs of something going on until you actually have a longer conversation with people. So, the same rules as with the mentally ill.
Mini mental is your best friend, who will be one of your best friends. The mini mental status exam. You can Google it, PDF it, and just print it out and look at it and review it. You can the MMSE and the brief psychiatric rating scale, and also the GDS. The GDS is the geriatric depression scale.
Any other questions from the audience?
GDS, geriatric depression scale. Also, the MMSE is a mini mental status exam, and the brief psychiatric rating scale, it's BPRS, which is kind of taking over for the mini mental because that family has a licensing issue, so a lot of people are now moving towards the BPRS as opposed to the mini mental.
You're going to get very good with the acronyms for everything.
You all mentioned that you didn't necessarily want to work with this population while you were in school. You didn't necessarily intern in places where you were dealing with this population. When it came to getting that first job, or really the first job with this population at some point, what were employers' responses to the fact that you didn't have experience with that population?
Well, when you are straight out of school, there's an understanding that you are on a learning curve. And that could be a great thing, you know. You can have, and as you're in this field, you're going to start hearing this a lot more. You know, you're going to get somebody who had 25 years of experience, but then they have to unlearn all the bad habits. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, because when you're coming out of school now, like I mentioned earlier, the aging population is very different than what it was 10, 15 years ago. So you're coming in with a very fresh perspective. And supervisors generally speaking, welcome the opportunity to really get somebody in their agency with that fresh perspective who is willing to go above and beyond and not just kind of have this tunnel vision of like, this is my job, I've been doing this for 15 years, this is how I do it. So, that's, and also you have to take initiative a lot on doing continuing education on your own. I know the New York State doesn't require anything for licensing just yet. You know, that's going to change soon. But take advantage of that. Look into certificate programs. Look into like free trainings. Involve yourself with different organizations that have general meetings once a month. Or, we were just talking about the Escada meeting that I just missed that was at her organization last month. So there are agencies out there that really target working with this specific population, and that you can really not only network but learn a tremendous amount of stuff that will really help you in your work. So,
are you guys a part of any professional organizations? You just touched on one of the basic questions that I...
We are.
Yeah.
Well, that. Agnes and I are part of ESCADA. It's the East Side Council for the Aging, on the Aging. And I was also part of this, it's WSIACA, and it's the West Side Interagency Council for the Aging. So I've primarily only worked in the uptown agencies, but I found that it's so great because within these organizations, or professional networking, there are government officials, there are, I work with councilmen, council members from the east side, the west side, people coming from downtown to know what uptown is doing. It's nonprofits, it's for-profits, it's people from hospitals, and it's really a great way to network, but also just to learn more about what's happening. I found that within this population, bereavement is expected 9 months through the year. I could not for the life of me find a bereavement counselor for the summertime at all. And so, yeah, I couldn't do it. And I have a real problem with charging somebody, $300 to breathe. Just for my own route, they asked me to do it. I said, I can't charge then. But then I wasn't allowed to do it. So I brought that to the ESCADA meeting. Maybe the one you missed. It was 2 meetings ago. And it was really great to have a group of people, maybe a little larger than this, say, hey, we're going to all look around. We're going to do some research. We're going to figure out how to help these bereaving people during the summer. Because it's just a complete gap. Like, would you expect people to put it on hold until September? It's just baffling that our entire field, I could not find one social worker who was working to do this, or a group. So, in that particular case, it was so great to have a meeting and that professional networking, because now we have people who are on it. So there are cases like that just, I know I'm talking a lot about death, but this is something that will come up a lot.
And with this population.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's another group, Bronx Task Force for the Aging, and they have government officials, everyone from each area of social work coming together, and it's a good resource to keep in your Rolodex because you can exchange lots of information, and they meet once a month.
There's a lot of also very specific groups. ESCADA and WSIACA are great because they're very general. Then if you're interested in specific areas, like I'm interested in elder abuse, I belong to the ECARD, which is the Elder Abuse Task Review Force through the New York City Elder Abuse Center. And they meet once a month, and we meet once a month, we discuss individual cases and try to find solutions. We have everybody from attorneys to guardianship people to APS workers represented, and we'll kind of try to find solutions. So you can definitely find yourself specific groups. Even within NASW, which I would highly encourage all of you to join, you have specialty groups, so the gerontological committee. You can definitely meet a lot of people who are doing this kind of work in very different areas, and sort of learn about different service provisions.
Even the Alzheimer's Association.
Oh, yeah.
You can Google different organizations, lots of information on those websites.
I recently have been working with the New York Academy of Medicine, and they have, it's very new, it's about maybe 2 years old. It's called the Age Friendly Initiative. And it's really great if you just feel like looking up. It's niam.org. What they're doing is they're looking for people, students, researchers, interns who will want to go out and see what's missing in the community that will help the quality of life for seniors. So what I was a part of was helping the street lights, the crossing sign, to give them 3 seconds more. Things like that. What can we do? So currently they're in the process of undergoing 59 initiatives just for New York City to help improve the quality of life for seniors so that they can stay more independent and we can actually serve them as a city. So it's just great to know that there are people out there that are looking to make things better.
Is anyone interested in private practice coming out of school? Because there's an organization called National Association for Professional Geriatric Care Managers. Geriatric care management, it's sort of this independent, private case management that you can do, and you can even set yourself up, if you are interested in this kind of work, you can set yourself up with an individual, or because many of them have their own little companies where you can do per diem work and sort of learn about the field from that aspect. And they have a very comprehensive website that's NAPGCM, the National Association of Private Geriatric Care Managers. .com. It's for profit.
Yeah, NYU also has a program for, I'm online now, I don't know how long I'm going to continue this, but they have gerontology, legal aspects of healthcare management, and there are 3 other classes that I can't think of right now, but it's working towards getting your nursing home license certificate to run a nursing home and be more on the administrative side. So I thought it would be a good addition to add to your LMSW to have that in, as one of the notches on your belt to say.
I have one more question here before we just wrap it up as always. So I'm going to let you.
I'm just going to throw this out there. It doesn't sound like you have this issue because you sound very busy, but I'm wondering if there was the opposite, where you're going out to meet with people, individual counseling, and people don't want to talk. People are just not there. They're not interested in meeting a new social worker, a new person, and
I had that experience a lot working for Gerontology because that was my very first job, so my confidence level was nil. But I felt I was coming to their home to assess them, to see if they needed services. But they were like, I'm not sure that I asked you to come here. And when you come here, what exactly are you assessing me for? Are you going to be checking me out to see if my memory is good? I thought maybe my son called so I could have a visitor or some company or someone to help me with my computer. But all of a sudden, you want to come and talk about how I'm getting on in my life. And that was a big barrier, I felt, at the home visit for me. I got a lot of rejection, but then I sort of spiced up my talk. But it still felt like I was coming to them, even, kind of selling something. And they, a lot of times, didn't really want to talk to me. It's part of it, I think, but then there are people who really do need the services and are really lonely. And then I found throughout, talking about loneliness, I found that the opposite side of that is just ask somebody about themselves. Just say, tell me about yourself. People will love to talk about themselves. Look at us. People love to talk about themselves. But when you actually ask them something specific that will put them on the defensive, they won't want to talk to you. They'll imagine, what are you here for? What are you looking for? But if you keep it really open and just say, hey, tell me about such and such, it just, you'll have a really great, I think it will turn things around. Just a very quick way to just change the dynamic.
I think it also trust,
Yeah.
building that relationship with them, letting them knowing that you're there to help them. Because even if they appear resistant and reluctant, you're going to work your way in there, not to be too aggressive, but you're going to find your way in there. And that's, to me, I find that it's mostly about trust. Them knowing that there's someone that they can turn to because they've had some disappointments, and here's another person coming in trying to save the world. No, I'm here to do what I can do. And to me, I find it's more about trust and building that relationship with that individual.
Yeah, that's delicate because sometimes you only have one phone call to do it. And that's your trust-building phone call. So it's tricky.
There's something in the silence. Remember the silence. There's still work going on, even in that silence.
But it's very true. I mean, you will definitely have this group of people who are fine, there's nothing ever wrong, and who don't need anything. And then you will have family members calling you, my mom needs this, that, and the other, go out there, go help, go do something. Currently, I'm in home care. I will have a family member calling me from California, you need to send an aide to my mom's house. Okay, your mom says she doesn't want anything. You have to do it, you have to do it. My mom doesn't want to take a shower. She has to, you have to make her do it. Like you go in and you have to sort of find this balance between allowing people to have their civil liberties and their autonomy and then doing what you know needs to get done. So there's definitely that fine balance. But like Gina said, there's talking about yourself. Fine, you don't need anything from me. I don't need to give you anything. Let's just kind of chat and talk. I have to be here anyway, so let's just,
I'm gonna leave you my phone number just in case.
Right. Put it on the refrigerator. Magnet it up on the refrigerator. Otherwise, it'll always get lost.
So I just want to wrap it up now. I'm going to have you guys in like 2 seconds each. I know that's like impossible. But
now that you know, obviously.
Golden advice tips for our graduating class, for people who are not graduating but are interested in this field in terms of going into the jobs. I know that we've covered a lot and it's going to be kind of redundant, but anything in a one-liner that you just want to put out there to us.
It's going to be a run-on sentence then. It's a fantastic field. I highly encourage you to test out the waters in this field. Network, and definitely join NASW at least for a year after. So.
I don't know if I could do it. I say on a different side, just because you've covered it, because that's perfect, I would say fake it till you make it, because they will be on you and they can smell you out, and you want to be very confident in whatever you're doing, saying, listening, fake it. And they will confide in you and they will trust you, but you have to know, you have to fake it at first. So that's my advice, and it's really come in handy for me.
I would just say, when you leave, consider getting into the medical social work component, working with the elderly, because the way managed long-term care is going, you're going to always have a job and you'll make more money in that arena.
That is, yes, that's brilliant, yes.
There is money to be made in social work. Don't believe everything they tell you.
That's true. That's true.
So I think with that, that's a positive end to wrap it up on. I want to thank all of you guys for returning. I know it's a sense of nostalgia just being in here, looking back over your course at NYU and looking at us who have to now embark on our journey. So thank you for bringing this back and giving back to us here at NYU, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And thank you, audience, for being here and coming to this career.